Well, good morning. It is the appointed hour for the August meeting of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board. We'll begin by calling the meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda is a consideration of approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. You've been furnished with copies. Are there additions or corrections?
I move approval.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Let's see, Carol, do you believe that we have a quorum? Yes. Good, we have a quorum. Thank you all for being here. Item 3, David, the MAPS 3 budget and obligation report.
Yes, sir. We still do not have the revenue and expenditure report because the books have not been closed, but we will bring those to you hopefully next month. But you do have the budget and obligations report in your packet in its usual form. We have, as you can see, a lot going on. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Michael Adams, do you have any questions that you want to pose to him?
No, I think Lance had indicated that the year-end close, there'd be, I guess, 2 months worth of reports next month. And we haven't closed the books yet, so July report's not in here. So I'm fine with what we have.
Any other questions? It's been moved that we receive the report and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, no. The report is received. Item 4, David.
Item 4 is recommend resolution approving change order number 2 and amendment number 2, MAPS 3 Convention Center, increase of $39,223.20, project M3-C003. This is part of the Convention Center construction, and as we were out there doing dirt work, if you'll recall, we had to over-excavate 5 feet of soil so that we can bring in suitable fill to build the building on, and during that removal of soil, we found a fuel tank. Probably been there 70 years. It was an old tank, so we had to remove that, and then some of the soil had to be replaced. And then also with the amendment part, we have foundations that we continue to discover. We should be through all of that, and it's very similar to what we had in the park. This comes with the approval from the subcommittee.
Questions? Been moved that we approve it. It's been seconded. Further discussion? Questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Thank you. Item 5, David.
Item 5 is recommend resolution approving the preliminary report MAPS 3 Lower Park Project M3-P016. I think everybody knows that we are well under construction on the upper park and now in design for the lower park, and today we bring you the preliminary report for the design on the lower park. Gavin McMillan is here from Hargraves Associates. I'd like to invite him up to tell you about the report.
Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a great presentation yesterday with the subcommittee, and just to remind the board members, it's been some time we looked at the lower park because we've been concentrating on the upper park, but over time we've been able to define a little better of how the 2 parks actually relate to each other and how they provide a similarity in terms of the core-to-shore idea, but also make each park unique and separate in its own entity. So I'm just going to briefly run through some highlights of the report. I'm going to skip through the end, the systems here, because they repeat a lot of the things that we're using in the upper park. I'll run through it, and then you can ask me some questions at the end here. So just a reminder, the whole of the core-to-shore idea, starting with Myriad Botanic Gardens at the top, the upper park under construction now, the lower park, and then connecting on to the existing river park along the river. So pedestrians and cyclists can make that amazing connection all the way through and spur redevelopment on either side of the park. So the lower park is a little smaller than the upper park at 28 acres. We have concentrated on turning that 28 acres into 8 unique areas, and our budget is $20.5 million with a little bit of change after that. So our 8 areas, we were going to feature a prairie garden, a continuation of the promenade from the upper park to the lower park, a continuation of the Project 180 style streetscapes down Robinson Avenue, a new sports area which is different than the upper park, the woodland area which is a continuation of the woodland from the upper park, a hollow area which is our low point in the lower park. We're featuring rain gardens, a community garden which, working with Myriad Botanic Gardens, I think this is a great new program idea that will make the lower park unique, and a crescent lawn which will be the little sister of the larger oval in the upper park for smaller events. So just going from top to bottom here, the panhandle shape, the sports area is at the top on the I-40. So you can see there are soccer fields, 4 basketball courts. You can see the Skydance Bridge and the promenade as an arc continuing all the way down the park. You can see the out parcel in the middle there that we've had to work around in terms of acquisitions. The woodland continuation, the hollow in the middle of the park, our lowest area, the community garden as we head our way down, and ending in the crescent lawn in the southern end of the park and the connections to existing riverfront park. So the Prairie Garden is basically the ramp up to the Skydance Bridge. As you're driving along Robinson, this is going to be an amazing entry to the city. You'll see the bridge and the Devon Tower in the background as you approach. Myriad has already experimented with the wildflowers that we would use here to make the prairie, so we're confident that this is going to look amazing. And there it is in the upper corner there. This is a fill area in our site, so we're going to build this area up that you'll be able to see it from Robinson Avenue. The promenade, as I said, is a continuation from the upper park. The paving, the trees, and the lighting all go all the way down, so it's a repetition of that. And there it is going from top to bottom, so it's an amazing walk and bike ride all the way down. Robinson Avenue, a continuation of the 180 streetscape with the trees, the lights, the paving, and the parallel parking, and also the bike lane as well as it faces the park. And there it is continuing all the way down Robinson Avenue, very simple. Treatment with the trees and lawn underneath. The sports area, which is something unique for the lower park, we have room for 2 soccer fields, but with our budget, we're recommending only 1 at this particular stage, and we're recommending that the second field is a bid ad alternate if we strike good bidding conditions later next year. So yes, we have 1 soccer field and an associated building. We have 4 flexible courts, basketball, but they could be striped for other things. Myriad has been talking with the Thunder, and they're willing to actually be a sponsor for 1 of these courts, which would be fantastic in terms of kids programs. The woodland is a continuation of the woodland area, the cross timbers from the upper park to the lower park, so the trees and the oaks continue down to the lower park, providing shade. That's that area there. The hollow, which is our low point in the middle of the park. So this is our point of drainage, so we're repeating the rain gardens that we're using in the upper park, making them a feature so we can interpret how stormwater is cleaned in the site. And let's say in the middle there, with the woodland walk making its way through the middle. The community garden, so this is another unique feature for the lower park. Myriad is thinking about running not only a small urban agriculture area on one side of the pavilion here, but also a community garden on the other. So this will offer a new program, and it ties into actually kids programming, learning about the food cycle, and actually growing and preparing and eating the food in the cafe. So that's that parcel there between that block. And then last but not least, the Crescent Lawn. So this is a much smaller area than the upper park, but it's good for little events that we can run. And so we're facing it towards the river, but we're providing a little hill that just pops up enough to see over the top of 15th Street that you can actually see the river. Because there's a natural levee there along the street. So we're popping up so you can actually see the river. And that's it at the bottom of the park there. So we hope there'll be future connections. We're going to suggest and work with Public Works about making pedestrians getting across on 15th Street and connecting onto the Riverfront Park Trail. This is the bit I'm going to skip through because it repeats a lot of the upper park, but basically we're dealing with some industrial uses on the site. We are surprised that the remediation challenges we face is not as great as we thought we were going to face, which is good news. So there will be some cleanup and remediation on the site. We'll be importing soil across the site. We'll be working with the topography. We're not modifying the earth forms as much as we are on the upper park, but we are curving the approach to the Sky Dance Bridge, and we're also building up the overlook to the river. This is our earthwork strategy. The red is cut and the green is fill, but really our biggest fill area is up towards the I-40, just to pop up for the meadow and prairie area. So as we continue the work through, we'll work all this up in detailed design and documentation for plans and specs to go out to bid, but much simpler materials and treatment of the lower park to make sure we meet our budget. We're treating the stormwater much as we were in the upper park. We have the rain gardens, so we're draining to the middle of the park. We're using the rain gardens to treat that. We're dealing with the 1 in 100 year flood, which is held back by the river, but we're cognizant of the fact that the 1 in 5 year flood affects the park as well. We're irrigating the full site, much like the upper park. The subcommittee felt very strong that we actually continue that, so we will be adding an additional groundwater well to supply irrigation for 100% of the park area. So that will be a continuation of the irrigation system, and it will be controlled out of Union Station in conjunction with the upper park system. We're repeating a lot of the upper park paving materials with the addition of adding synthetic grass for the soccer field on the advice from Parks and Rec in terms of just getting a lot more playability out of the field throughout the year, but also day and night. So this field will be lit for nighttime play as well. The multi-purpose courts will also be striped and painted, and of course blue for Thunder. So we're repeating a lot of the other materials, as I said, from the upper park to the lower park, making sure that that's just a family of elements repeated all the way down, including Project 180. Even though the lower park isn't intended not to be over-programmed, we are building in the flexibility to hold smaller events. So the lawn area can hold up about 600 people. There'll be parallel parking on all sides of the park, which can be used not only for parking for smaller events, but also setting up for food trucks. So yes, we can program the park if need be, but it's not providing the same amount of infrastructure as the upper park. We looked at what buildings we actually need, so we want to continue the same language of the upper park buildings to the lower park, and we worked with Myriad Botanic Gardens to come up with a modular kind of system, but we vary the roof structure for each of the different pavilions in the park. So we're using the same material as the upper park. The garden pavilion sits in the community garden area. So the idea here is to have the enclosed area pushed to one side, so we have roof and shade, so Myriad can run program in the shade for outdoor seating as well. So inside the enclosed area supports restrooms, office space for Myriad, a little concession area, and of course storage. So it has the basics in there. At the end of the presentation, we have a list of bid alternates, and one of the alternates is to actually extend and enlarge these buildings a little more, have drop-down barn doors to allow for an additional layer of flexibility in programming and revenue potential for these buildings. And I'll mention that at the end of the project. So the sports pavilion, it sits between the soccer fields and the basketball courts. So the idea here is to have shade 360 degrees around the building, so the enclosed area sits in the middle of the building because soccer players will be on one side, basketball players on the other side, but again, the same basics in terms of restrooms, storage, concession, and office is accommodated. During the process, we had an interesting idea come from the community that supported the idea of having a universal playground based on a nature play theme, which we think is a great idea. This particular group would like to go and fundraise and come up and plan and integrate this into the park. We've identified one area for this based on their requirements. about half an acre up into the just above the basketball courts. So it's in a prominent area that has close to ADA parking and also the restrooms. So our hope is that based on the approval of the PDR, this group can go and fundraise, and hopefully this can be integrated as we design, get into detailed design over the next year. We're using the same amount of energy throughout the park, but we're not providing as much infrastructure as the upper park. We have probably 3 service points in terms of utilities and power generation. OG&E, since we started in the lower park, now have an underground line through that twists through our park as a result of undergrounding the overhead, which is great. So we're using power very sparingly in the lower park. We are providing the convenience receptacles to allow the operator to use that. Our lighting is very basic, so we're continuing the same lights from the promenade from top to bottom. We are lighting the Project 180 street lights on the perimeter of the park. We are lighting all the cross sidewalks that go east to west through the park. We are lighting the soccer field. We are lighting the basketball courts. The only thing we're not lighting from a budget point of view is the woodland walk, the curvy one through the middle there. And we've suggested that as an ad alternate as we go through as well, that we earmark that as if we can afford it, we should light that at the end of the day. So same similar palette as the upper park. We'll repeat those same elements all the way down, including the light masts, the ornamental light masts that happen on the promenade. Vegetation, we have basically our planting palette is a lot simpler than the upper park. The upper park is more towards the botanic gardens. The lower park, we'll be repeating a lot of that, but really our interest in diversity comes with the community garden area. And as we work through the remediation process, we will try and endeavor to keep as many existing trees as possible. We did not have the benefit of that in the upper park. There's very few existing trees, but as we go through, we'll try and keep as many trees as possible. So we've begun to identify where those trees might be, and that will inform our remediation process as we move forward. But we are repeating the same species of trees as we go from top to bottom. And as I said, the interest will be in the prairie garden towards the I-40, but also the community gardens towards the bottom of the park. So we're confident that this is much simpler, but it's a much more relaxed feel in the lower park. We've looked at maintenance in terms of maintenance levels. The green area is less maintenance, the red is the higher maintenance. So we began zoning and working with Myriad Botanic Gardens to set priorities on maintenance areas, which informs where our storage areas are, our office areas are, and our external bulk storage areas. So in terms of schedule, the red dotted line is where we are now. So with your approval of the PDR and the council approval hopefully next week, we will begin the final plans and specs process, which will take us to 2019. We'll go out to bid towards the end of 2019. And construction would happen over the next 2 years with a late summer opening in 2021. So as I mentioned on the way through, we've identified, like exactly what we did for the upper park, we identified some items for bid alternates, so we'll continue to design and work with the subcommittee all the way through on these and go out to bid with the hope that the market conditions are favorable, that we would be able to afford some of these as we go along. So we've identified 5 bid alternates. Number 1 is to increase the size of the buildings and what happens inside the buildings. We've identified $4 million for that. We upgraded the IT and data communications for the upper park, and we need to connect onto that for the lower park to the 2 pavilions. So we identified some for that. As I mentioned, the lighting for the woodland walk in the middle of the site, we'd like to identify some for that. And the garden room trellises, which is proving to be very donor-friendly for the upper park, we would like to actually add a couple of those in the lower park as well. And last but not least, the area for the second lit soccer field. If the first field proves to be popular in terms of need and expectations of use either before or after we build it, we're leaving that area for a second soccer field later. So with that, I'd like to invite you to ask any questions that you need to.
Questions for Gavin?
I had a couple, Kevin. On the Prairie Garden, I drove by there this morning, and that area looks like it's pretty nicely landscaped now with nice tall grasses. And are you proposing tearing that all out and doing something different?
What you see is probably the approach to the Skydance Bridge now, which hasn't, so actually we want to raise up the rest of the area to be that same elevation. So you'll see from the road to the approach to the Skydance, all that would be a continuation.
Okay.
So really it's building on what's already there.
So I'm only seeing the first few front. I
Right.
didn't get out of the car to see what was behind it, but it
Right.
looked pretty nice
Right.
from where it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to build on that.
Okay, and then my other question, on the, you showed this map that had the two buildings, the concentric circles. And there's I know there's a large gap between those two buildings. I guess we wouldn't have restrooms or any other sort of building facilities in there.
Right.
So
So
have you considered, as an alternative, instead of enlarging the two existing buildings, have you considered the possibility of a third building to fill in that gap?
yes, and in fact, we did originally when we had those the out parcels in the middle. So the red circle, you remember, is a 500-foot radius, and that's the level of service we're providing in the upper park. It's still okay to have restrooms spaced at even up to 1,000 feet. It's still considered convenient. So we just wanted to make sure everyone understood that there's a little more walking between the restrooms in the lower park. But again, providing the restrooms is an expensive item, and at the moment we
Well, I'm just saying, as the ad alternate,
right.
would it be, what's the logic, I guess, on making the two existing buildings larger rather than adding?
That's really to extend their revenue-generating potential, as much like we did the upper park, rather than providing more restrooms. So if we had the out parcel, we might consider adding an additional building just to add the level of service there, but at the moment we don't.
Okay. And my third question, I guess, maybe for you, David. I understood from the meeting yesterday that the Manuel Perez Park that was adjoining our park has now been relocated. So what's the thought? I mean, is that land now going to be made available for additional parkland for this park, or what was the?
No, I think it
what
was,
were they trying to do?
I think it was surplus and sold.
So it's going to be developed into something else.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Kim, anything from the subcommittee that you and Michael want us to hear?
I think that we did have a great meeting yesterday, and certainly it has been over a year since we've looked at this plan. So I think we're all really excited to get this preliminary report accepted and spend the next year designing something that's just as amazing as the Upper Park.
Michael?
No comment other than compared to today, yesterday we really got into the weeds. So we had a lot of time talking about a lot of these, the plan as was presented. So we didn't fly through it yesterday like we did today.
Oh, we spent about an hour and a half going through it.
So that was fully vetted is what I wanted to report with that.
Yes, I was there, and I'd say I compliment both of you. It was a really energetic meeting with a lot of questions, and I think the advisory board would feel great about the engagement of the Park Subcommittee on this, and there were lots of questions, and I'm excited about how well you guys are getting through this, so very good. Anybody else have a question? Well, then, shall we approve it? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution regarding the preliminary report. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Gavin, go to work. Okay? Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 6.
Item 6 is recommend resolution approving amendment number 5 to contract for landscape architectural services with Hargraves Associates, Maps 3 Park, increase of $2,018,634, project M3-P006. This is the amendment for the landscape architecture services to do the work that you just saw described in the preliminary report. and this comes approved from the subcommittee.
Been moved, is there a second? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution to move forward with this work and this contractual arrangement. Further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Item 7, David.
Item 7 is recommend joint resolution approving change order number 7 and amendment number 9, Maps 3 Hudson Avenue Street Improvements, increase of $15,648.50, project M3-P004A. If you've been down in the area along the west side of the park, down by the maintenance facility, you'll see that Hudson was rebuilt. If you recall, it was in very bad shape, lots of patches and asphalt and concrete and gravel and all kinds of things. Now it is a beautiful new street. It includes new parking for the park. It includes what they call the non-revenue track from the maintenance facility up to the main track. This project was split between Public Works, the park, and the streetcar, and this should be the final change order and amendment for that project. And this comes with the approval of both the park and the streetcar subcommittees.
Discussion? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Item 8, David.
Item 8 is recommend joint resolution approving change order number 1 and amendment number 1, Maps 3 wastewater main relocations and expansions, increase of $116,355, project M3-C009/SC-1015/WC0938. This is work with the convention center, and as we are digging and doing the locations, we find things that, like we have on streetcar, like we have on the park, things underground that we don't know where they are. So there were some things that needed to be provided. One of them is a 20-inch butterfly valve on the water line so that we could shut it off for just a section, and then some sewer line relocations. This has multiple funding sources, so the MAPS 3 account will be $40,693. This comes with the approval of the Convention Center.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Item 9, David.
Item 9 is recommend resolution approving change order number 15, MAPS 3 Trail Improvements, Project 2, Phase 2, Project 1, I-44 West, Will Rogers Trail, increase of $11,000, project M3-T002A. I believe you were given a revised change order. Is that right, Lisa? Okay, well, this is for $11,000. The subcommittee amended that to $7,000. They reduced the amount of bollards or of delineators in there after quite a discussion. But comes approved with the less number.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded, and Carol, make sure we're wording this right. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this resolution with the number amended from 11,000 to 7,000. All right. Does everybody understand? All right. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Item 10, David.
Item 10 is recommend resolution approving change order number 13 and amendment number 16, MAPS 3 Trail Improvements, Phase 2, Project 2, I-44 West, Will Rogers Trail, increase of $3,395, project M3-T002. This project is essentially complete, but there's some little miscellaneous things that we're trying to clean up so that we can get a final hopefully next month, and there was a fence modification, and then you can see on the amendments there's a credit for quantity revisions. So as I said, this is just trying to clean up the project and get it finished. This comes with the approval from the subcommittee.
Second. Been moved and seconded that we approve this resolution. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's approved. All right. Item 11. David?
Item 11 is a presentation on additional MAPS 3 projects utilizing excess collections and/or interest from the Oklahoma City Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund. As all of you know on the board, we've been going through discussions with the subcommittees, what they might like to suggest for use of the excess monies that is about $31 million. Actually, you'll see that it has actually come up, but 31 is the number that we've been working with. Yes, it is good news. So ADG and the MAPS office have been working together to put all this together in a form that you can see. I don't anticipate voting to distribute money today. This is really more informational so that the board can see what all the other work that the other subcommittees have done, and we can start this discussion. I've asked Mike Mize to do the presentation today, and I'd like to turn it over to him.
Mike, before you start, I just wanted to say this. I know that most of you have heard many of these things in the individual subcommittees, but this will be our first time to hear all of them together. And we think that having some additional time for everyone to review what's going on in the other subcommittees would be valuable. And so while you'll also recall that we asked David to give us some sense of timing on some of the needs would be greater needs from a timing standpoint than others. So we're going to hear kind of both of those factors today, what some of the subcommittees have suggested that they would like to use the money for, and then we're going to try to sort out what the timing priorities would be on those. We'll probably hear more about that before the day's over, I'm sure. Anyway, you'll have plenty of time to study the handout that you have, and we're delighted to have Mike here to explain it to us. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, Manager Todd, happy to be here. This presentation is one that's very similar to one that we did about a year ago and has a lot of the same information, but it's been updated to reflect current numbers. And it's, as Chairman McDaniel mentioned, it's also been updated to show what the individual subcommittees have suggested in terms of ways that they might utilize some portion of the excess, the balance of the excess collections and the interest. So that's really what we're here to do today, is to show you that. And when we get to the end, you'll see last time we made this presentation, we had some factors that you might consider when it is time to actually allocate those funds that would might help prioritize how they're spent. Obviously, this is a list of the projects, and down at the bottom, we've included infrastructure and contingency, and we're going to go through each one of those, show its current status, and what that list is that's been suggested by each of the subcommittees. Convention Center, under construction. As you all know, it was a very successful bid process. We were considerably under budget on the bid. We accepted all the ad alternates except the central plant, and we did not accept the central plant because we are using Veolia to provide chilled water and steam for the building. The original budget for the convention center was $252 million. The substation relocation we show as $26 million. And there was program contingency added of $6 million. You may recall that was what was added when we were on a different site, and that was to facilitate the convention center on that site. The $9 million for the parking garage, $5 million of that was from excess collections, and $4 million of that came from the substation amount. And you'll see the substation obligated number down there is $25 million. We originally had $30 million in there, so $4 million of that went toward the parking garage. Other obligated funds are $224 million. The current balance is a little bit misleading. That 42, almost $43 million consists of $11 million, a little more than $11 million in project contingency. It also reflects the positive effect of the successful bids and some other budget items which were under budget as well. The river, we've completed 3 phases of the river. Phase 4 was not completed, hasn't even been designed. So the original river budget was $57 million. There was excess revenue provided to the river project of $786,000 to help complete the Whitewater facility. And then just recently you approved an additional $759,000 to offset some of the initial operating expenses. So that leaves a revised budget of $58,719,000 and a balance of 0. The river additional priorities are summarized here in a couple of different categories. One of the things to point out about the requests from the river subcommittee are that many of these items are revenue-generating items that could conceivably help the river entities, the Whitewater and some of the other entities down there, with their operating expenses and to cover more operating expenses. Because of that, it would be optimal if those items were complete and ready for the season next year. So there is some sense of urgency with respect to some of these items for the river. The status of the fairgrounds, it's substantially complete. You all know, I think, that there are some punch list items that are still outstanding. The original budget was $58 million. Current obligated is $56, which leaves a balance of just over $2 million. Fairgrounds additional priorities. There was a detailed sheet that was provided as part of your agenda packet, which identifies a lot of these items. And these are items that came from the fairgrounds subcommittee. They have not, there is a group of them that has been prioritized by them as priority 1, another group that's been prioritized as priority 2, and then a third priority. That total is $9.7 million. Senior health and wellness, I'm going to show you the overall budget and then show the individual budget, the status of the individual budgets for each of the wellness centers. The total wellness I-Plan budget was just over $52 million. The first number that you see for center number 1 is the original budget. The center number 1 revised is the budget after some additional funds were provided by this group and by City Council. And the same for center number 2, it had a revised budget. Center number 3 and number 4 were still on the original budgets for a total revised budget of $54,100,000. Wellness number 1, you can see the breakdown here of the additional funds that were provided to get to the revised budget of $12,494,000, with a balance in their budget right now of $85,000. Wellness Center number 2, once again, a breakdown of the additional funds that were provided to them from program contingency, and a balance which is very similar to Wellness Center number 1, $87,000. Wellness Center number 3, the original budget of $13,623,000, and just to point out, I know that we have not started design, we haven't started construction, but those obligated funds represent a lot of the programming effort and the project requirements documents that you may recall from very early on in the project. So those funds have been allocated across all 4 wellness centers. So even though we haven't actually started design or construction, there have been MAPS funds obligated and expended toward all 4 of the projects. And same with Wellness Center number 4, and you noticed that the original budget is higher than any of the previous 3, and that is to take into account probable increased construction costs because it's coming later in the program. There is one ask from the Senior Wellness Center Subcommittee, and that's a 5th center. We've budgeted that at $15,300,000 based on a probable start in another 24 months or so. Status of the trails, West River Trail is complete, Will Rogers Trail is complete, Lake Draper Trail well into construction, Airport Trail has not been completed. This is the budget summary of the, and these are all original numbers. They have not changed. The West River Trail, its current status in terms of budget, there is actually a balance of a little over $1 million. Construction came in less than we anticipated, but we've also added a federal grant match of $449,000 to that trail. The Will Rogers Trail, once again, came in under budget, so it has a balance of $2.2 million. Lake Draper and Airport Trail budget, those were combined for a total of $12 million. The current obligated is for the Lake Draper Trail, which leaves a balance of $2.6 million. Trails additional priorities. One of the priorities is, those of you who were here early on may remember a term called desire paths, which is an area where there is no sidewalk, but lots of evidence that people walk all the time. So one of the requests from the Trails and Sidewalk Subcommittee is some trails on the Northwest Expressway where we have those desire paths and where we think we could benefit the citizens in that area. The Earlywine River Trail is a trail that would go from the river to about 119th Street. It is a trail that would enhance the current trail system and would serve a lot of the south side. There is, as you saw, some additional remaining fund from the trails, from the successful bidding that took place on those projects of nearly $6 million, and the subcommittee wanted to point out that they intend to use that $6 million on these projects, and some of them are, the first 2 are connectors that would connect trails, one trail to another, making a much more convenient system, signage and amenities on the trails, and for a total of $5.6 million of the approximately $6 million that they have remaining. So other considerations are that, with respect to the trails and sidewalks, these are other funds that have been obligated by the city for additional trails within Oklahoma City, and that commitment right now is at almost $27 million. These are not MAPS funds. These are separate funds, but they are funds that the city has committed. Sidewalk status, we're still under construction on the sidewalks, getting very close to completion. City Council did, as you may remember, add an additional $9 million to the sidewalk budget very early on in the process. Actually, that was back in 2013. So the original I-Plan budget was just over $9 million, another $9 million added for $18 million total. Current obligated is $17.8 million, so there's a current project balance in the sidewalk budget of $306,000. These are, once again, other funds that the city has committed 2 sidewalks in the future, and just wanted to show that as an example of the city's commitment to sidewalks and trails. Park status, I think you are all aware that we are well under construction. Things are going very well there. The projected summer opening next year, projected Lower Park bid opening date, I mean, we've got second quarter of 2019. That may get pushed out a little bit, but it will be sometime in the middle of 2019, we believe, that will go out to bid. The park budget summary, the total park I-plan budget was $132 million. Program contingency funds in 2017 were added at almost $5.6 million. We've currently obligated 108, almost 109 million. The 29 million really has 2 significant components in it. The 29 million has about $4 million of upper park contingency reflected in it, and then another 25 million for design and construction of the lower park, and you'll see that in the breakdown. So this is the upper park budget and where we are today. The current project balance is $4.5 million, and most of that is project contingency. Lower park budget, we are, as I said, that number is almost $25 million. The construction estimate that's provided by Hargraves is about $20 million. Park additional priorities, they'd like to see $10 million for renovations to Union Station. I think everyone understands that Union Station was never part of the original implementation plan. It was never funded or budgeted. So it could be a very, very key element in the success of the overall success of the park, and this is a very high priority for the park subcommittee. Streetcar status. Most of you probably saw that it was under construction on your way in this morning. We expect substantial completion in the middle of October and hope to be operational in the middle of December. The streetcar budget, originally in the I-plan, just almost $129 million. $3 million was added in 2016. Our preliminary cost estimates showed that we might be over budget on that project. Fortunately, we came in under budget. $3 million was added to the budget at that time, but because of that, we've also been able to add a 7th car and create a second revenue loop, which is the Bricktown, commonly known as the Bricktown Loop. So the current balance in that budget right now is $189,000. So the streetcar priorities, this is like any construction project except worse. There are lots more unidentified and unknown issues that we've uncovered, and a lot of those are reflected in this scope completion item of $1.7 million. Things like we've got to put up a catenary pole, and none of the plans show that there's a basement extending out underneath the sidewalk, and we still had to figure out how to do that, and Jacobs did a great job of that. But there are a number of situations like that. The 5th Street turnback, funding has been provided for the curved rail and the switches at Robinson and Broadway for the 5th Street turnback. This reflects the straight track in between. It gives Embark a significant degree of flexibility in terms of operations. It also provides a way to short-circuit one of the routes if there is a traffic accident or some other disruption of the service north of 5th Street. This is something that is a high priority for the streetcar subcommittee, not just because of its benefit to Embark, but also because it is going to be a whole lot easier to achieve and cause a lot less disruption downtown if we can, in fact, get that construction started very soon, before Herzog completes the rest of the project in the middle of October. So it's a very high priority. Another high priority for them is the traffic signal prioritization. This is $850,000 that helps, it's going to help Embark a lot. It will help the streetcar a lot, and it will actually help traffic in the area quite a bit by providing optimal performance for the streetcars at various intersections and from stop to stop. There's another list of items that they have, the priority 2 items. I think that list is included in your packet. That total is $7,600,000. So this is shows the distribution of the original $30 million. We called it at one point infrastructure. It became the substation budget, and there was $17 million in program contingency. This shows where those funds have been distributed since the beginning of the project, and if you, the total balance of that right now is $688,000. This does not include excess collections or interest. It's simply the $47 million that was allocated originally for infrastructure and for program contingency. Excess collections, these are previous allocations that came from excess collections. You can see that that total is $15 million. Obviously, all of those items came through CAB and then were approved by City Council. So the next 2 slides were in our previous presentation. They were prepared by Craig Freeman and his staff. If you have specific questions about these, I can't answer them. They're way above my pay grade. I can, though, take you to the second slide, and down at the bottom, if you see that there's a number right near the bottom of $32,517,000. That is the part of the increase that David talked about. We have benefited from additional interest collections, and this is projected revenue from excess collections of $32,517,000, and when you add to that the program contingency balance of $688, instead of the 31 that we were talking about before, we're now talking about a number that's more like $33 million. So, I said we would show you the factors to consider that we presented last time to the Citizens Advisory Board. This is a list that hasn't been prioritized, but these are items that we think should be considered with respect to how funds are allocated. Things like, do they contribute to operational efficiency? Has the program, original program goal been met for that project? Is the request scalable? What's the impact to the schedule? Those kinds of things that need to be considered when that final fund allocation decision is made. And with that, I'll ask if you have any questions.
Questions for Mike?
I have one comment in that this is a wonderful document with a tremendous amount of history and knowledge, and I think it makes decisions that may be difficult easier to wrap your mind around, because there's a great understanding of where those figures come from, the facts and supporting elements. So I'm very thankful for this document and the work that went into it.
And I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I need to mention the fact that the MAP staff and Lo Runkle at ADG have been working very, very hard to complete this document and to update it and to try and make it as understandable as possible, given the fact that I'm up here explaining it. So I want to thank all the MAP staff and Lowe in particular for their contributions.
Michael, I have a question. Maybe I just didn't see it, but there, you've shown us what excess funds are available, and you've shown us a list of all of the ideas, suggestions that have come. Is there a total of all those items that have come from the subcommittees that are in your presentation? I didn't see that.
It's not in the presentation. The last number that I saw was 51 million, but I think that's grown somewhat in the last week. David, do you?
Yeah, it's fluctuated just in the subcommittees that we've had this week.
Okay, but for our purposes, we're thinking that we've got something just north of $30 million, and we've got something in excess of $50 million in request. Is that, am I understanding that?
You're right. It's about 33 million now with the updated budget number.
Yeah, I saw that.
But we do have requests in excess of 50 million. So there has to be some prioritization, which is one of the reasons that we suggested that list of factors that might be applied in making that decision.
Okay, now one other question from me. If the, on those items, particularly in sidewalks and trails, where you have indicated that there are other funds available, either a federal grant or city bond money or something else, we obviously have no control over that. So what should we take away when Trails ask us for an additional trail and they're asking for a substantial amount of money? We know that the city has other money to do trails, but we don't know whether they'll do what the subcommittee does. How should we think about that?
Well, one of the things to do is use that list of factors that we've suggested and apply those to the current status of the sidewalks and trails projects and see how that ends up stacking up against other projects as you relate them to those factors that we've suggested.
Well, to be more specific, I was wondering if there would be information available from the city that says, if you don't do that, we're going to do it 3 years from now. That's what I'm asking you. I mean, if they say there's an airport trail and we say, if they say we're going to do it in 3 years, if you don't do it now, that would be a big factor.
I believe they're still working on their priorities right now, and we'll get with Planning and Public Works and mesh all that together when we come back to the trails and sidewalks.
That'd be great. That'd be
We'll
great.
give you whatever information is available then.
Good. Cecilia?
And actually, that was along the lines, thank you for asking that question, because that was my same question. And the other one is probably not for you, but probably for David, in regards to timing. Like, what is the time frame that this board has to make these decisions? And I ask that because we didn't have a senior wellness committee this week, but I have some new information that I'd like to present.
I think as Mike spoke, some of the things have different timing issues than others. As you'll see, the next 3 items are about streetcar and trying to get it finished and asking for funds for that. The river has seasonal issues. I don't know that any of the other subcommittees necessarily have a defined timeline they need to meet right now. So this may be an iterative process where we have several meetings where we talk about this, or if the board wants us to come back real soon with a total plan, we can do that too. It's really up to this board.
But Cecilia, in addition to that, I don't think there is any rigid time frame or deadline by which that decision needs to be made.
Well, and I'm just thinking a bit out loud here, but if streetcar needs funds now, because we have everybody here and they're already working on it, it makes sense to go ahead and approve it, but nobody else has a deadline, then streetcar kind of has a leg up if we don't put some type of decision timeline on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought you were asking, too, if there's something that is not included in this list that you would want to be considered, how would we do that? Did you ask that as well?
I am asking that as well.
Okay.
I've got a bunch of questions.
I think for a period here, this will be an evolving list. The subcommittees would have to bring it forward to this board if there's additional things to be asked. Obviously, there's a time when that has to end, and we have to make a decision.
Right.
And I don't really have a time for you. Because some of the discussions, the Fifth Wellness Center is I think, supported by a lot of people, and it's a great idea, but timing-wise, we still have 2 to build. Should we wait and see, how they react? I don't know. I'm going to need some guidance from you guys, too.
Well, and it's in regard, like I said, we didn't have a senior wellness subcommittee yesterday, so I didn't get to discuss this, but I have had a conversation with Wellness Center number 1, and they have an idea for expansion that not only expands the center, which is at 5,000 members now, and overcrowded. We're actually turning people away. And it increases the partnership with the church there. And so I wanted to be able to have that conversation with the subcommittee before we made that decision. And I wasn't really sure, like I said, of the timeline and or even, because I've never had to put anything on the agenda, how I go about that. So.
You did ask about the streetcar as well, and there are 3 items on your agenda today specifically asking for those funds.
On the thing.
So David, I'm sorry, Susan?
Just another question, Mike, is in regards to the factors. So where will we develop the answers within our committees to bring back to this board on these answers? Like, for instance, I know on the Sidewalk and Trails Committee, one of our answers is the fact that with those additional funds from the City Council, we were able to build now 50 miles of 70 that were promised. You guys don't know, maybe know that, but those types of things. So will you, Lowell, the overnight genius, obviously, because some of this stuff just came up yesterday in our committee meeting. Anyway, will you help us with those answers so we can bring those back to this committee next time?
Absolutely. I think between MAP staff, the consultants on the individual projects, and ADG, we'll have an opportunity to try to consider those factors.
Okay. Because, I mean, I want to clarify that our committee, we had really good presentation 2 meetings ago from David. Tried to get every person he could think of to help us with bonds and city and park works and then federal grants so that we could understand that. And it's very convoluted. And then there are some 2007 bonds that haven't been sold and acted on yet. But the fact of the matter is, trails and sidewalks, but we know the list is never ending. So we get this done, we move on to the next. And we also know that our city's understanding and use of trails is changing, and we're really happy about that. So I appreciate all the work you did here. Thank you.
Michael?
A couple of thoughts. I try not to ramble, but following up what Sue said, I happen to sit on the Bond Advisory Committee, and indeed, there's money from 2010. And of course, 15% of the bond that we just passed is set aside for unlisted projects. So there's money there. Of course, it is up to people with a higher pay grade than I am, of course, to decide how those monies are spent. But it would seem to me that it would be appropriate to ask the Public Works Director and the Mayor to bring that up, just to think about how bond dollars might be going forward. I happen to think, following up on Sue, thought that I'm passionate about sidewalks and trails. And the other thing, and I'm passionate about wellness centers. The thing I hate about this whole process, of course, is that we all are passionate about those things we worked for 8 years. And of course it's going to be difficult to let that go. And I know that, and And I'm one of the folks that is just as passionate probably as anyone else, and I understand that. Having said that, what I think is important that we do is that one of the things that we do is to go back and look at what the voters expected. In the chamber's own poll before the vote on maps, the park was probably the most popular project of all the maps projects. A close second and third were maps and were sidewalks and trails and senior wellness centers. It seems to me that we need to pay attention to that as we think about not just how we're going to finish up MAPS 3. Of course, we should be thinking, and most of us are, of course, about a MAPS 4. And it would seem to me that the message that would be important to send to the voters is that we took what they wanted and what they expected with these additional funds in a way that solidifies that trust in terms of the possibility, of course, of moving forth with a MAPS 4. Just
Something I would like to add to that, what Mike is discussing, is that since 2010, though, the demographics and some of the companies that we've attracted and the workforce that those people are attracting from out of state have come with their ideas and what they think made them decide to go ahead and leave West Coast cities to come to Oklahoma City, which at the time, in 2007 or 2000, they would not even have considered that. But now, because of what we've done through MAPS, they've reconsidered their plans and they are relocating here. And I think some of their ideas of what would help them attract more people to Oklahoma City and make them help make the decision on why they want to stay, I think that has kind of changed some of that thinking in where the priorities should be laid too. So I think not only consider what was done and what was promised in 2010, but the changing demographics I think is important to consider also. Maybe some of our priorities would change because of that.
Michael?
I have a few comments. One, you mentioned, I think the total list was somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 million. And you said that's still evolving because I'm sure we have, as well as items coming on and off the list, I'm sure there's still engineering to be done on a lot of those numbers. But one of the things I think that's impacted that number, correct me if I'm wrong, is when the trails and sidewalks took on $6 million of their ask with their existing funds. So that, I think that 50 million has probably come down by that amount. Is that correct?
Yes, you're right.
Okay. The second thing I wanted to, I guess, I was very pleased to hear that the 31 million had already grown to 33, and that's encouraging, and I'm sure we'll continue to get updates on that number too. It shouldn't go down. We quit collecting, right? But we are still earning interest in things like that, so I anticipate that number is probably fairly safe. I guess the other kind of big question is on the convention center, we're showing 42 or 43 million unobligated. Now, some of that's contingency, and I'm sure they'll lead into that as things come up. But there looks like there's going to be a pretty good chunk of money in the convention center, and I didn't see an ask from the convention center. So is the thought that that money will also be available to us for some of this wish list?
Yes. I mean, I think that subject to the city council deciding what to do on all of this, I would just say right now it looks like that we have the money in our budget and we did not ask for any of the excess funds for the convention center. Luckily, the budget, it came in within the budget, so we're not trying to, we do expect that we will have enough money to build the kind of convention center we're all expecting within the budget, and our subcommittee did not bring forward any additional ask. And as you've already noted, there will undoubtedly be a lot of change orders and a lot of amendments and things as we go through construction in the next 2 or 3 years. But certainly, if there's money left in that budget, we'd want to be the beneficiary of that would be the whole MAPS 3 projects. And so I think our subcommittee is very flexible about that, Mike.
Okay. Well, in that regard, and looking at the big picture, if we had, say, 45 million in ask, if we adjust that for the trails and sidewalk, and we've got 33 in excess funds, and another, I mean, it only takes another 20 million coming out of the convention center to effectively be able to meet most, if not all, of these asks.
Yeah.
So we're keeping that in mind. I think maybe we don't get in a big fist fight now over, what we're going to do now versus what we're not going to do now, because I think it's reasonable to expect we're going to be able to do most all of this stuff. And so I would encourage, I think we kind of discussed last month, that MAPS and ADG continue to work on refining the numbers and coming to us as needed with the ask. I mean, they've mentioned already that the streetcars, they have some asks today for some of this money because of urgent needs to do it while the contractors are here. And I think the river has a couple of projects that are going to decrease their costs and increase revenue opportunities. They have a partner that wants to start a leadership program at the river that's going to help them raise revenues, but that comes with completing the second floor of the building. And with the river, I mean, they do have only construction time. They can only do this stuff during the winter. So I would encourage us to look at that maybe being something we could kick off and get going to be able to get that done during this off season. But I also think we ought to, just looking at the big picture, consider that it looks like we're probably going to be able to do
Most all of it.
most all of what's on the list. And I'm sure some of the stuff may come off the list as, not really on target or stuff, and I'm sure the numbers will change on it. But I feel quite comfortable that we're going to have the funds to do most of this list. Now, that being said, I don't want to encourage anybody to go out and create another list at this point in time, but I think that's an important thing to look at.
I agree, Mike. Nathaniel?
I agree with Mike. I was doing my own math as far as how that all shakes out, and completely agree that I think with even just taking a portion of the funds that you've graciously not having to use with the convention center, then the math works out. And I actually have to leave before the streetcar item comes up, which I hate, but obviously you know where I stand with that, and I think David can explain well once the item comes up the near-term operational need to be able to actually finish it. But as far as how all that shakes out, I mean, we've taken some excess collections in the past over the last 4 years. Ideally, everything would just hit all at once, and so it'd be pretty easy to kind of see how it all works out. But that's not how it is working out. But it does appear as though these items would fit within the numbers that we have to work with. But with that, I've kind of said my piece on a later agenda item, but I won't affect quorum leaving, but I have to head out. Sorry.
Anyone else? Well, I do want to say this. I think we should have a sense that this is a very deliberative process. We're now in year 8, so we've never felt as though when we designed pay-as-you-go, we knew this was not going to be something that we rushed through. And so I think we have time to consider it. And Cynthia, Cecilia, I know we didn't have a senior wellness subcommittee this month, but we certainly want to have an opportunity for you and our friends from Senior Wellness Center number 1 to have a chance to present their ideas to the subcommittee. We decided in the last meeting or the meeting before that we would have a process that was the same process that had served us so well for the last 8 years. And so if there are needs, they should be presented to the subcommittee brings them here with their recommendation and then forward. So unless David sees it differently, I'm saying, why don't you all present those to the subcommittee, and they will then be brought forward in due course. And then we count on David and his staff and Mike and ADG to let us know if there's a time sensitivity or an urgency that needs to be addressed, as we know there is for the streetcar. But otherwise, we continue the process that we've had in place all this time. Now, does that sound like a plan that works? So nobody has been forgotten. Everybody's going to get a chance to make their presentation and have it be adequately considered within the framework of our process. Does that seem okay?
I think that totally meets our charge of review and recommend.
Okay. That sound all right to you, David?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well then, any other questions for Mike or any other comments? All right then, shall we go to item 12, which we may have discussed a little.
Right. Item 12 is recommend resolution approving the allocation of $2,101,925 of excess collections and/or interest from the Oklahoma City Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund for the MAPS 3 Transit Modern Streetcar Project, additional improvement to complete the MAPS 3 streetcar system. You know, we've been building this streetcar for over 18 months. There have been many challenges, not only things that we've found underground and with construction, but trying to accommodate businesses and making sure we don't damage them any more than is absolutely necessary as far as disruption. Trying to keep all of the events that happen downtown. I had no idea there were so many events that went on downtown and that we impacted and had to do temporary patching and temporary fills and signing and all these things. And that's been a lot of the challenges that we've had. So we are at the point where we've used our budget. We need this additional money to finish the project as it was approved. Even though we are over budget, I think that it is still a great thing to say that it's only $2 million over budget when you see streetcar projects across the country coming in twice their budget, you know, and having all kinds of problems like that. So I think that the team has done very well. So this is an ask for this excess money rather than come with each amendment to quantities and change orders. What we've done is we have extrapolated numbers out to where we think we need to be, and that's why this number is here. And this comes with approval from the subcommittee.
So this is item 12.
It is.
It is item 12. Discussion?
David, I think maybe, let me make sure I understand what you're saying is that you think this is all that's going to be needed to finish this project up. It's not just current items, because I'm a little concerned on the project because this was an item that did come under budget, and we apparently have gone through not only the contingency but the under budget items, and now we're coming back for even more money when we'd already given them some money, and they came in under budget on the bid. So I want to make sure that the creep, I guess, is we've got a handle on it. It's not going to just...
Yeah, we've been meeting almost weekly with the consultant, and we have this lengthy spreadsheet that's got all these costs and items, and then we meet with the contractor and look out ahead at what we think is going to be needed. So I do believe this is where we need to be to get it finished. You know, there's been some additions that we've added to help with operations, the signal prioritization and those kind of things, to give Public Works and Embark the tools they need to make the adjustments that they might need to make sure that the streetcar is efficient and works like it's supposed to.
Those are items that weren't in the original bid, though?
No, they were not.
Okay.
David, is it important as we vote on these for us to understand what the next two coming are? I mean, we're talking about item 12, but item 13 also asks for more money, and item 14 asks for more money. Should you not explain that to us before we vote on the first one?
That's a good point, and I can do that.
Please.
Item 13 is recommend resolution approving change order number 14 and amendment number 13, MAPS 3 Modern Streetcar Mainline, increase of $1,648,074.77, and authorizing the use of excess collections from the Oklahoma City Capital Improvement Sales Tax to fund change order number 14, amendment number 13, project M3-S007. So this is an item that has a change order that you're used to seeing, similar items. There is a piece in that change order that is for what we call the Fifth Street turnback. And the Fifth Street turnback, we believe, is crucial for operations. Mike spoke about it briefly, but if there's an accident or a water main break or something up around, say, St. Anthony's or up in that other area, then the streetcar can continue to run and make that turn at Fifth Street, not go up to all the way through Midtown. Similar to what we have in the southern portion, that if there's a problem in Bricktown, we're able to use the loop that's on Gaylord and short circuit it. Gives them more flexibility. Then also, with the expansion, eventual expansion, if it were to go to the Health Sciences Center, it gives us the ability to come in from that direction and not have to go all the way up through Midtown, but be able to turn on Fifth in order to go south. It just gives them a substantial amount of flexibility. And then you'll also see in that amendment there is almost a $300,000 credit because we've completed all the utility projects. So this is part of our accounting that we're doing for the streetcar with that $300,000 credit to the project. But what the change order amendment has is items in here that would allow us to do that Fifth Street turnback. And then item 14 is recommend resolution approving amendment number 4 to the contract for engineering consulting services of the Jacobs Engineering Group, MAPS 3 Modern Streetcar Project, increase of $250,000, and authorizing use of excess collections from the Oklahoma City Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund to fund amendment number 4, project M3-S007. This is the funding necessary for the design of that Fifth Street turnback.
Okay, now we will be voting on these separately, so you, but if you have questions, let's start now. Sue?
So David, these items, are they what we asked for in the wish list for streetcar?
They are the priority 1 wish list that they had on there, yes.
Okay.
Mike, you had a question?
A comment, a thought. This, particularly the turn back, that would seem to me be a perfect example of funds that could come from unlisted projects on the bond. And I wish there wasn't this sense of urgency. The other thought that I have is, again, by doing this, what we are saying is that this is a priority that we decided doesn't stand up with the other projects. And by doing that, I don't like doing that, because I think we need to look at all these projects at the same time and not say, well, now we've got this much left, but taking this off the top, it's very unsettling for me. I'm not against this. I don't know how I feel about this. I haven't had time to actually think about it. This discussion has helped, but I would like more time to think about it. I'm not going to vote no. I know this is going to pass. I'm not going to vote no on this, however, because I don't know for sure how I feel about it, but I just, for the record, or will be for the record, when I vote, I will abstain. I just want people to understand why.
Zane?
I just want to clarify what Mike was saying is this First Amendment is critical to completing the project, too.
So that's the scope completion.
Yes.
So what we say is 1.75 in here, in reality, when we tally up the numbers, is 2.1.
I can't remember how it was listed on here. Yeah, there's scope completion, but that's beyond what we already know is on the change order today. So there's the change order of things that we have that complete that balance to get that up to the roughly $2 million that we're talking about.
So item number 12 is change order, not additional funding to complete the streetcar system.
Item 12 is additional money just to complete what we have designed right now.
Due to change order.
Right, due to field conditions. Right.
That, now my mind is clear.
Well, all of these are from the excess money. I mean, to clarify for Mac's points. Yeah, all 3 of these are from excess funds, so we would be advancing this on our list and saying that we are going to say this is a priority if we approve it today, because this is coming out of the excess money that Mike just talked about today. Everybody understand that? Okay, Mike?
I might have some of the same concerns that Michael had on this if we hadn't just gone through this process, I guess, and where I felt comfortable that overall we should have money. I don't see this as taking away from the opportunity to do one of the other items, because I feel like we're going to have money out there to do.
Right, we're in a very
everything.
good position.
Right, and so, and because it's important to do this stuff now, while the contractors are there, while the streets are tore up, not come back to do the turnaround, say, a year from now, when we'd have to tear up the streets or bring a different contractor in. I think it's important and wise to do this now. So in that regard, I'm in favor of this.
Kim?
I was going to comment something earlier, but then I decided not to, but maybe this now makes sense. In our process of reviewing and recommending, if we receive information that says that there are other entities that money can come from, we could certainly recommend the council look at what we think those monies should be applied to and decide whether they agree with us or not to do that. So I would also think, by that same process of thought, that if there are monies that could be applied to projects that the MAPS has already agreed to pay for, kind of get rebated back into the program, that could happen as well. So that even though we may vote some of these things out of excess collections, when we look at this whole document in some larger format, that maybe some of those monies could come back in. I don't know, but it just seems like we need to make logical decisions at the time that it's logical, but let's keep the big picture as the big picture. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think all of you have made sense. I do say that I think that you make a good, in a perfect world, I wish we had everything in front of us to do at one time, but the fact is we have the circumstances, and tearing up the streets again to add something a year from now, to me, logic dictates that we finish this project while we have everybody here to do it, and we know we're going to have the money to do it. Does anybody think that we're going to leave the streets torn up because we can't finish this project? Well, no. I mean, we've got to deliver on what we promised, and we've got a chance to do it here, and thank goodness we have the funds available to do it. So I think you've all made good points, and I agree with them. But what's before us is, I think, something that, at least from my viewpoint, we need to do. So, with that, further discussion? Been moved and seconded that we approve item number 12. Further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's approved. You abstain. I'm sorry. Mike abstains. So let me just make this clear. If we don't get this finished and we have to come back and tear up the streets, I'm going to ask Mike Dover. Only kidding. Only kidding. Mike agrees. Mike agrees.
On the other hand, we could go ahead at some point in the very near future and make our recommendations and not wait for a month or two down the road.
We could. All right, this is done. Item 13, you've already heard the discussion. Does anybody want to move that? It's been moved and seconded. We approve item 13. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Would you like to abstain, Mike? Yeah, one abstention. All yes. Item 14. See some nervousness here. It's been moved and seconded. We approve item 14. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. One abstention. All right. That brings us to item 15, new business. Mike Adams has something he wants to bring us under new business. Mike?
Yeah, I was walking along the river trail the other day, and I came to where it intersected with the Will Rogers Trail, and there was this big MAPS 3 logo painted on there, and really looked sharp. We've got a great logo, and I think it was on the ground, on the trail, and it really looked good, and it made me really proud that, and I got to thinking about this, how are we branding the MAPS projects, and should we consider going back and looking at some of this stuff? I talk to citizens, and sometimes there's confusion as to what is MAPS, why are we doing MAPS? We only do projects downtown. We don't see anything in my neighborhood. I think the MAPS is a great story that we have to tell about the city and part of the Renaissance, and I think we ought to look at maybe trying to do some branding on all of our projects. I don't know that the River Project has anything out there that says it is funded by MAPS. I don't know about the fairgrounds, whether it has anything on there, and whether we do, put the logo in the buildings, whether we do storyboards in the lobbies of some of the buildings, whether we have interpretive signage outside or along the trails or something, whether we go out on the sidewalks, maybe into the major intersections, and acid stain the logo into the sidewalk, just to let folks that knows that this was a MAPS 3 sidewalk. I just think we ought to look at trying to do some better branding. I think this is important, A, to differentiate or communicate to the citizens, what projects are out there. It's part of telling our story of the Renaissance of the city. I think it'll be important if we're going to do future MAPS projects for folks to as they walk around the city, see what's been done and what it belongs to. We might even take some of these fake storefronts along Devon parking garage or the new parking garage and put in displays, and they're talking about MAPS and what we've done, and not only just MAPS 3, but all the MAPS projects, and just kind of communicate to the people as part of their history. And I'd just like us to take a look at that and see if we can't do, I think we designed a great logo, and if we can't do something maybe to go back and in each of these projects maybe make sure the MAPS brand is attached to them and that we do a good job of telling the story. Old style, you'd have a plaque in the building, somewhere that would list that this was a MAPS 3 project, and here was the council members and all that stuff that it passed it in the mayor. But, I don't know what we ought to do, but I think it'd be nice if we prominently marked and branded.
The good news is
MAPS project.
We have started on that.
Okay.
We realized putting those on the trails was really a good, cool thing, like you're saying. So we're putting them on all the trails. Councilman Greenwell has asked us to come up with a way of telling the MAPS story at all of the facilities, the Civic Center, at the arena, at the library, the places that we've gone. So I'm working with our public information officer to come up with what needs to be done. It might be different at each building. It probably will be. And we're working through that, and I think that's a great point. And we always put the plaques, the aluminum or bronze plaques in the buildings, but we need something beyond that, and I agree. So we will look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mike, we talked about that last year before the State Fair, when the Bennett Event Center was going to be open for the first time, and they put it up on all of the electronic boards and stuff. And I think you have a great idea. Glad to know they're working on it. So you can bring us a report back about it. Great idea, Mike. Okay, item 16. We've heard, I guess, from about all the subcommittees. Any subcommittee want to add anything today? All right. David, do you have anything to add under item 17?
No, I think we've talked about pretty much everything. The convention center is well under construction. You can see that. Park's going great, and that's phase 4 sidewalks are still underway.
Okay. Any questions for David? That brings us to item 18. I want to start with a comment from the board. We have a celebrity among us today. Robin Lockton has been selected as the Employee of the Month. Robin, would you stand and let us all acknowledge that great honor you got? And parenthetically, tomorrow's her birthday. So if you want to say congratulations, happy birthday to her, that'd be great too. Any other comments from the board, staff, citizens here?
I have a comment.
Pardon me?
I have a comment.
All right.
I think our chairman also has a birthday coming up.
But I've had a lot more than she has.
And so happy birthday to you, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Any citizens here that would like to make a comment? We welcome you here. Hearing none, Cecilia has moved that we adjourn, seconded by Michael Dover. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.